You hold a record, birth after 17 cycles of IVF, over 20,000 successful IVF pregnancies. Welcome to the show. I don't think there's anybody more credible than you. What is the cause of infertility?
It's not women alone.
Yeah.
40% male infertility, 40% female infertility, and 20% couples have both factors. There's a passage where the egg and the sperm meet and that gets blocked. What is IVF? We're just creating a bypass. We take the eggs out, we take the sperm, we fertilize them, we put them back in. The more preservative-rich food we have, that is impacting egg reserves.
Let's talk about egg freezing and what it entails.
You may be born with 1 million eggs. By the time you're 37, there are 25,000 left.
What is the ideal time for a woman to freeze her eggs?
After 32, the graph goes down like this, and after 37, it goes down like this. And at 40, you have a 5% kind of chance.
So I come to you and I say, I want to freeze my eggs. What is the next step?
I would like to break one myth. It is not only for the rich.
I'm now going to ask you a question that a lot of people have on their minds. As a byproduct of IVF, there are twins, sometimes there are triplets. Is that a myth?
95% risk of abortion lies in the first 12 weeks. It's a myth that everybody in Bollywood would do surrogacy just because they don't want to disturb their physical appearance. Some of them have actual indications like the recurrent pregnancy losses.
This can give hope to a lot of women.
I've had instances जहाँ पर divorce papers मैंने अपने कमरे में पढ़ा. I used to think that this is a very Indian thing. American patients also crying that if I don't get pregnant this cycle, doc, I'll get divorced. Men don't have a menopause. Correct. And women do. Why?
Once you freeze your eggs, it becomes difficult for you to conceive naturally.
So I'll not name, but one of my celebrity patients told me that
they say the gift of life is the most precious one of all. Meet Dr. Manika Khanna, the mother of miracles, who has helped bring 25,000 plus babies into the world through IVF. With 2 decades of experience, Dr. Manika, an infertility specialist and gynecologist, is a true pioneer. Tune in for an insightful conversation on all things infertility, surrogacy, egg freezing, the process, the cost, and everything in between. Dr. Manika, welcome to Humans of Bombay. Like I was telling you offline, I'm so thrilled to have you here because, as you know, IVF is a subject that is very little is known about, but it's so relevant and so important. And you are known as the mother of miracles because you have an 80% success rate, and your contribution in the field of reproductive medicine in the last 2 decades is unparalleled. You hold a record for birth after 17 cycles of IVF, and you have over 20,000 successful IVF pregnancies. So welcome to the show. I don't think there's anybody more credible than you.
Thank you so much, Karishma, and that's kind of you. But yes, this is a subject. It is not just my area of work. It is my passion, my love. And so, it reflects.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll get into the nitty-gritties of IVF, but let's set some context, right? All of this begins with infertility, and there's very little spoken about infertility. So can you talk to me a little bit about what you've sensed as a pattern over the past 2 decades?
Okay. So I'll give you a little example that'll give you a whole lot of insight on what's happening. So when I was doing my graduation and post-graduation, we were taught that the normal semen analysis counts are like, a minimum should be 60 million and above. By the time I finished my MD and I started my practice, like in 2003, I started active gynae practice, and by the time I was coming towards infertility, 2005-06, WHO actually changed the definition, and the definition of normalcy came to 20 million.
Wow, no way.
So anything about 20 million was considered normal.
Okay.
So that is just a small reflection of how infertility has been rising. It's not a problem confined to any one country. It's a global problem. WHO has said that it is a kind of pandemic brewing.
Yeah.
So infertility is rising, and has risen from 10 to 12% to now 15% and 20% also in some countries. In our country, it's hovering around the 15% mark.
It's extremely scary, and a huge and acute lack of awareness on this subject, right?
True.
What is the cause of infertility in men and women?
Okay. So first and foremost, it should be clear that, please guys, it's not women alone
Yeah.
who are responsible.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's, 40% male infertility, 40% female infertility, and 20% couples have both factors.
Right.
So first and foremost. Now, in the females, it could be anything. So the invention of IVF, so-called, happened with blocked fallopian tubes, So there's a passage where the egg and the sperm meet and that gets blocked. So, it's kind of a bypass. What is IVF? We're just creating a bypass. We take the eggs out, we take the sperm, we fertilize them, we put them back in.
Right.
So it started with that, but yes, now there are various indications. So other than tubal block, it is polycystic ovarian disease, it is endometriosis, fibroids if at the wrong place. Major cause that is coming up is declining ovarian reserves in women, and I think this is the most alarming one.
Okay.
And then there are other rarer causes like uterine anomalies from birth. You don't have a developed uterus, or you have a very small uterus. In men, I would say it is decreased counts, it is decreased motility of the sperm. It is a lot of rise in quantity of abnormal sperms. So these are the various factors, and sometimes there will be total azoospermia, like the sperm count is 0.
But what causes this? Are there external factors, right? Like there's oftentimes people say, and this is, I would say that it's a floating theory, right? That if you smoke cigarettes, for example, it affects some kind of either sperm count, or even for women, it's considered that your infertility drops. Are there external factors like these or habits that cause infertility in the current generation?
Right. Smoking, tobacco in any form is harmful to both men and women. And then the use of preservatives in our food, So the more preservative-rich food we have, that is impacting especially the egg reserves of the human body.
Like common preservatives, right? Like are you talking about chips or noodles, stuff like that?
Right. And then ketchup.
Oh, no.
And the preserved jams and the preserved pickles. So that amka achar of dadi, which was homemade, was much better because it didn't have so many preservatives. And if there were the natural preservatives were like salt were used for that, right? Correct. So all these synthetic preservatives that we use, they are actually increasing the rate of infertility. And then the reversed biological clock. We are all awake at night, glued to our phones, and so I've seen my teenager children waking up all night and sleeping through the day. So, there is a biological clock inside which has its own circadian rhythm. So if you are if you're going opposite the biological clock, it is disturbing your hormones and hence affecting your fertility. So these are also factors.
Yeah.
And then, most importantly, we are the diabetic capital of the world. And diabetes has a direct correlation with polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Oh my God.
So if you have family history of diabetes, you have to be even more careful. So you're more likely to have PCOS. And PCOS will definitely, what is PCOS? Is basically, it's a syndrome. It's not a disease.
Correct.
First and foremost,
Yes.
people should know this.
Yes.
It's not a disease, it's a syndrome. Syndrome is a collection of symptoms. So if, your egg is not developing in time, sometimes not releasing at all, ovulation is not happening, so how are you going to conceive?
Correct.
So that is affecting. So yes, a lot of these lifestyle factors, stress most importantly.
Yeah.
I know we can't do away with it, but yes, I think we should do whatever we can to reduce it.
Right. What about blue screens, right? A lot of people also say online that if you keep your laptop on your lap for example, it's just genuinely bad for you. On an infertility front, on a radiation front, even the blue screen via the phone that a lot of people sleep next to. Talk to me about that. Does that affect infertility at all?
Yeah, so there are conflicting research articles on it. So a consensus has not been reached. But yes, to some extent it has been shown, especially if you put your laptops, you're lying down, putting it on your lap for a long time. The heat also that it generates, especially for males, the sperms, if we understand that the testicles are below the rest of the human body, that's a specific purpose because they are -2 degrees less than the normal human temperature. So if there is a constant heat source there, of course, it is going to affect the sperm quality.
Let's move on to people who find themselves in the mix of infertility and obviously look to procedures like IVF, which you're an expert in and have conducted so many successfully. Let's talk about egg freezing and what it entails.
Okay. So just to give you a background, women are like born with a certain number of eggs. So it's like money in your account, So you may be born with 1 million eggs. By the time you reach puberty, there are a few lakhs. And by the time you're 32, there are only 1,20,000 left on an average. And by the time you're 37, guess how much? There are 25,000 left.
It's very few.
Yeah, very few. So what is happening is that egg reserves decline with age. But yes, now technology is there. And I call this technology reproductive freedom. It's like you don't have to marry just because your age to procreate is ticking by and choose to marry a partner you don't find to be ideal. Yeah. And or you put your other dreams and goals behind just because it's important to procreate right now. For women who find themselves in that space, I think egg freezing is reproductive freedom.
Yeah.
Because you're freezing them and locking them at that particular age.
Correct.
So there and then, at whatever age you have frozen them, the age is locked there. So you can use them 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line. It gives you time.
Correct.
Yes. It gives you time. So I feel that when the right technology is there, it should be used. Why not?
Yes, 100%. So let's talk a little bit about time. Right? What is the ideal time for a woman to freeze her eggs?
Well, ideal, if you ask me, it's the 20s.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. A woman is most fertile between her 21 to 31.
Right.
So, but up to 32 is also a very good time to freeze. If you have past that time, no worries. Up to 34 is also not bad. So after 32, the graph goes down like this, and after 37, it goes down like this. And at 40, you have a 5% kind of chance of a natural conception happening. So I feel that I know 20s is a little impractical because you don't even know in 20s what's going to happen with your life. Yeah. But yes, early 30s is, I would recommend that if you've made that choice in life, you should do it, because the sooner you do it,
the better.
The better quality and better number of eggs you're going to get. Because, to have a live baby, you should have a decent number of eggs, which can be, thawed on a later date and then used.
Correct. Let's go deeper. So say somebody wants to opt to freeze their eggs. Talk to me about the varying cycles. So I have friends who've gone through multiple cycles of IVF, and like you mentioned, with each passing year, it has gotten more difficult. Yeah. But in each cycle, you get only a finite number of fertile eggs.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about the cycles and what is the number of eggs that are healthy that one should look to have at the end of that cycle, and how many do you typically retrieve?
Okay. So, when we talk about cycles, ideally the aim, at least this is what we at Kottayam do, and I have taught all my doctors, minimize the stimulations to women.
Okay.
Because, whenever you are undergoing an ovarian stimulation, hormones are being used. So up to 2, 3, it's fine. But beyond a certain number, if you are just going on stimulating, there can be repercussions at a later date, which, sometimes the patient is not made aware of.
Correct.
Right? So we should minimize the number of stimulations. Ideally, in one cycle, if I retrieve about 7 to 8 eggs, that's a decent number.
7 to 8 eggs or 7 to 8 fertile eggs?
See, fertile you can't predict through the ultrasounds.
Okay.
So once they come out and you analyze them in the microscope, then it is never going to be that if you've retrieved 8, all of them are going to be fertile.
Exactly.
So I am taking that into consideration, that out of these 7 that I retrieve, 2 may not be mature. So they are not fertile or infertile, they are mature or immature.
Right.
So 2 may be immature and the rest may be mature, and the mature ones have a better chance at fertilization and forming good embryos. So if you have like 7 eggs, that's a decent number to achieve a single healthy pregnancy. Though we are dealing with human life, so we can never say 100%. But yes, technology, I always say when couples who come to us are distraught, they don't have the most precious things in life. So I always tell them that look at the hope technology has given. Because in the days when we didn't have this, these were the people who had only adoption as an answer. And now almost 80% of them we can, get them babies.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? So one cycle should be enough. But yes, sometimes you may not form the desired number or quality. Then you can do another cycle.
Yeah.
And there is something known as egg pooling.
Okay.
So you do a couple of cycles and you pool the eggs
From
together.
the various cycles.
From the various cycles, so that you have a decent pool
Correct.
to work on a later date.
Okay. Now let's talk about the actual process. Like I mentioned to you, I'm more than aware because this is in my plan to do it, to do the process. So talk to me about the entire process, right? So I come to you and I say, I want to freeze my eggs. You say, okay, great. So what is the next step? And then all of the steps leading up to the actual procedure that happens.
Okay. So when you come up to us, we first give you a detailed consultation on, what it is going to entail, how many days you have to be here and so on. So we run you through a basic blood work, which checks your hormones, which checks your viral markers, blah, blah, blah. So we do a basic blood workup. And this also gives us an insight, some amount of insight into what could be the potential number of eggs you might make. There's something known as an antral follicle count, which we do on an ultrasound, which is typically best done on day 2 or day 3 of a cycle. We do that. We assess that, so we have a fair idea and we can counsel the patient accordingly. And then we tell you that, okay, 9 to 10 days is the average amount of time you have to be taking the injections. Yeah. It is a myth that IVF is very painful. Believe me, it isn't.
So let's talk about the injection process. Let's assume whoever's watching has no idea about IVF.
Right.
So that's how we're going to talk to them, right? So how many injections, for how long are there? Is there oral medication in terms of hormones that are given? Let's just give them the whole picture.
Okay. So, every clinic has its own protocols, but the most internationally accepted and widely medical data-based protocols is what we use, and so I'll elaborate on that. You really don't need too many oral drugs. You just need a folic acid supplement and a multivitamin. That's it. The injections are for the first 5 days. You take only one shot in a day. So this is basically the purest form of FSH, that is recombinant FSH, that we give you. And then on day 6, we add another injection, which is known as an antagonist. So from day 6 to day 9 or 10, you're going to have 2 injections a day. Okay. And it is best to take the injections ideally in the clinic because, these are all cold chain sensitive injections. So it's best that they come out of the refrigerator and are given direct. But yes, you can carry them home also, self-inject them also. Our nurses would give you a tutorial on how to do that, and never to keep them in the freezing chamber, always in the normal refrigerating chamber of the refrigerator.
And where are the injections administered?
So they can be, again, it's a myth that all the injections have to be taken in the tummy. No.
Okay.
They can be taken in your buttocks, arms, whatever is more convenient to you. Every patient has a different pain sensitivity index.
Okay.
So you give these injections. Day 6 onwards, there are 2 injections. There will be ultrasound monitoring of the growth of your follicles. So, for example, one ultrasound happens in the beginning on day 2. The other one will happen, 3-4 days later, and then alternate days, and towards the last 2-3 days, almost daily ultrasound, because the moment your follicles reach a certain size, which is about 16-17 mm of size, that is the right time to give the trigger shot.
Okay.
So the trigger shot is a simple small injection you take at night, and roughly 34 to 35 hours later is your egg pickup scheduled.
Understood.
So you have one holiday in between. So suppose Tuesday night you take a trigger shot, Wednesday is holiday, Thursday you report to the clinic, and that's when your egg pickup is done. It's a simple process done under short general anesthesia. People take different time, but it can be anything from 7 minutes to 20 minutes. That's it.
At max,
And then you're done. So a thin needle goes in, and under ultrasound guidance, we are viewing it, and we take the fluid out and immediately hand it over to the embryologist. So, a lot of the success rate in IVF depends upon the lab.
Okay.
So, so the doctors are the faces and they get a lot of credit, but the embryologist working in the lab, also the man and the machine both, I always say. So the man or the woman behind the machine is as important as the machine. So the technology has to be state of the art. People have to be well trained, and 60% of the result lies in the lab.
Okay, that's very interesting to know.
So then you pick those immediately. There's a connecting window between the lab and the OT, and throughout till it reaches the embryologist, he puts it back into the incubator, keeps it safely. At every point, a 37 degrees Celsius temperature is maintained. Okay, I haven't put nail paint in more than 20 years because it's not ideal. You're not supposed to put perfumes and colognes. And I remember one day, so our nurses instruct, that on the day of pickup, you don't have to wear makeup and no nail paint and stuff like that. So there's this one patient who came, and this is, I'm talking about 8-9 years back when I was doing clinical practice. Now I'm more in the CEO role and less into the clinical practice. So I asked that, I saw there was makeup. I said, how come the patient is wearing makeup? So my nurse went and asked her. She said, oh, I've just put nude makeup.
It's very basic.
Right, it's very basic. So perfumes, odors, they all matter in a lab.
Okay.
So then the eggs are taken. Then they are assessed whether they're mature, they're immature. And then they are frozen. And we freeze them at minus 180 degrees Celsius. So technology is great. See, you can freeze life. We keep them safe. Each straw is labeled in detail. Labs are digitized, so there is no confusion. That happens only in movies.
just to let you know.
Right, just to let you know. So it doesn't happen actually. So everything is very nicely labeled, and then we maintain them in liquid nitrogen. Those cans have to be topped up from time to time, because that is how the eggs survive inside.
Correct.
And then whenever you've probably found the right partner or decided to have children, that is when you come to us. Then we, take the male partner's sample, we thaw the eggs, we then fertilize them through a big machine known as the ICSI machine. So, and make the embryo, and yes, transfer it back when you're ready to be a mother.
Okay. So let me go ahead and ask you certain questions that women could have in their mind, right?
Yeah.
So when you're administering these injections, in the beginning, what is your ovary size? And by the end, what does your ovary size become?
So in the beginning, your ovaries are like what, 2 to 3 centimeter?
Yeah.
And now the size at the time of pickup depends upon the number of follicles you've made.
Yeah.
So these days we are very careful, and we don't like to hyperstimulate the patient. And so the ovaries would be like maybe 6 centimeter in size at the day of pickup, because that is when they are ballooned the most.
So it's almost double.
It's almost double. Yeah.
Okay. What about best practices during the process, right? I know that when I was doing my research, and of course I've been speaking with doctors, a light workout at best, because you don't want to put too much stress. Is that correct? Or how does it work?
Yes. In fact, in the initial 3-4 days, you can carry on with your regular workout also. It doesn't matter, because the ovary is not that heavy. Yes, in the last 3-4 days of the stimulation, a lighter workout is preferred, because the ovaries are heavy. You're yourself going to fail,
Yeah.
So, and there will be a slight amount of mood swing can go with it, a little bit of water retention. So don't panic. That 1.5 kg that you gain will be gone once the retrieval is done in a few days' time.
Yeah.
The ovary comes back to its normal cycle till your next menstrual cycle comes. So it's just a temporary change that happens.
It's just bloating.
It's just bloating,
Okay.
yeah. So yes, you can continue the light workouts in the latter half. There is not much rest required. You can just have a light meal the same night. You are awake almost immediately after the procedure.
Yeah.
There is discomfort. I would not call it pain. There can be some amount of spotting, bleeding for a day maybe. That's it. Nothing to be scared of.
Yeah.
And then the changes that have happened, the water retention and all, will subside by the time you get your next menstrual cycle.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's it.
Okay. Talk to us about basic checkers that women can look out for when they're going in for their blood work.
Okay. So when you're going in for your blood work, there are 3 important things that matter there. The FSH levels, the follicular stimulating hormone, the luteinizing hormone, that is the LH levels, and your AMH.
Yeah.
So they go opposite. So lower the AMH, higher the FSH. That means lower the egg reserve.
Yeah.
But please don't be scared with low AMH reports, because of late research is showing that it is not that accurate a marker. The antral follicle count done on the ultrasound is a more accurate marker of your ovarian reserve.
Right.
So please don't panic with seeing low AMH reports.
Okay. And at what point do you recommend people have or women have their second round? When is that recommended or advised? Once the first cycle is over?
So once the first cycle is over, then we can give a month's gap, and then we can do another round of that. Or sometimes now there is a duo-stim option available. So that is, if you're okay with the process, you're not feeling you're not in a lot of discomfort, then you do one pickup and you give a 5 days gap, and you start another cycle.
Oh,
This
okay.
is a fairly new concept. This was part of the conference in Amsterdam where I was invited as a guest speaker. The whole purpose of the conference was to reduce TTLB, time to live birth. That's where IVF research is now going.
Yes.
And research is showing that sometimes the eggs made in the second half of the cycle, the luteal phase, which is not very popular in our country, but luteal phase stimulations are done in the Western world, is sometimes actually better
Okay.
than the one collected in the follicular phase, that is the first half of the cycle.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the cost component. Lots of misinformation. I was telling you offline that, we've posted a couple of reels and people think that this is only for the rich. Of course, there is technology involved, so there is a cost component. But what is that measure in terms of how much people would have to earmark to pull for this?
So, I would like to break one myth. It is not only for the rich.
Okay.
It is within the reach of a large population of the middle class as well. And so the egg freezing cost would be like, if an average IVF costs you around 2.2 lakhs, the egg freezing cost would go up to 3 lakhs at the most.
Okay.
And there is a small maintenance cost, so every clinic does it differently. Like, we don't charge the patient for the first couple of years.
To freeze the egg.
To keep them frozen, you know. And then some clinics charge annually a small cost to keep them. But that's a small cost, like a 30,000-40,000 rupees.
Yeah.
That's it. So it is not that super expensive.
What about the cost of hormones and that initial medication that happens?
Yeah, so the cost of hormones is included in the cost that I told you. And the initial medication, as I told you, is not much. It's just a folic acid and a multivitamin supplement.
Okay.
So it is actually a myth. It can be done by a lot of people. Yes, of course, there will be a small cost when you come 2, 3, 4 years down the line to get them fertilized and then transferred.
Now, say a few years have passed and the woman has met the man who she wants to marry or has married, and they decided to come and actually fertilize the egg. What is the process? Then take me through that, and then we'll talk about the cost attached to that as well.
Okay. So then the process is that time it's important that you report in the follicular phase. That is, you come to us during your menstrual cycle. Yes, of course, you will be in touch with the clinic annually. And so we will advise you a fresh blood workup because, you will be like 3 years older or 4 years older. So we'll do a fresh blood workup just to see the basics, your hemoglobin is right, your sugar levels are good, like your basic screen,
Correct.
So we do that. We do that for the male partner as well.
Yeah.
And we do his semen analysis.
Okay.
Because to make the baby, you need a sperm too. So the semen analysis is done. And then what we do is that we typically, when we take a semen for analysis, we freeze it as well.
Okay.
Because, sometimes when you have a psychological stress that you have to give the semen now, you're not able to produce the best semen.
Okay.
Because a lot of it is controlled from the mind. So we keep a backup sample so that the patient is easy and relaxed if another sample is required.
Right.
So, and of course, everything is done after all consent form signing. That goes without saying. And so we take the male partner's semen. We start you on an oral medication to build up the uterine lining from day 2 or day 3 of your cycle. Again, there will be 3-4 ultrasounds in the 15 days that will happen. And once your uterine lining is right, which books say a minimum of 7 mm, we try to keep it above 8 millimeters. And that is when you are ready to transfer. So then accordingly, the lab activity will be synchronized.
Correct.
So the eggs would be thawed, the semen would be used, fertilization will happen, and then there are 2 kinds of transfers. This could be a day 3 transfer or a day 5 blastocyst transfer. So you take only a couple of injections in the end. So there's not many injections now. There's just oral medication, couple of injections in the end, and you get the embryo transfer done. Again, it is a big myth that bed rest, there's no need.
Yeah.
There is no need. So, our books literally say 10 minutes,
Yeah.
but it's okay if you want to take a day's rest or 2 days rest, but that's enough. You can carry on with your regular activity, but not strenuous activity.
And the actual process of implantation, how much time does that take?
So, the day we transfer the embryos,
Yeah.
then we do a pregnancy test 14 or 15 days later.
Okay.
That's
Right.
when you get to know whether they have implanted or not.
Okay. That's when you understand. Okay.
Yes.
What is the cost component now of this second phase, which is implantation?
Yeah.
etc.?
So the second phase is actually not much because you just to take some oral medications, some ultrasounds, the fertilization part in the lab. So this would be like anything between 35 to 50,000. That's it
Okay.
for one cycle.
Okay.
That is one embryo transfer.
Right. Amazing. I'm now going to ask you a question that a lot of people have on their minds, right? As a byproduct of IVF, there are twins, sometimes there are triplets that women have reported, obviously happily because you have babies. Is that a myth, or is that something that you can sense as a pattern that does happen because of the number of eggs that are implanted for safety?
Right. Interesting question. So, you have to have policies. Like at Gaudium, we have standard operating protocols for practically guiding everybody from the clinician to the embryologist down to the housekeeping. So, the ideal outcome of an IVF pregnancy is supposed to be a single healthy baby, and that should be your goal. And that is why you don't transfer in a younger patient, you transfer maybe 1 or 2 embryos.
Okay.
In a patient who is like beyond 37, you transfer 3 embryos. So mostly you're going to result in a single healthy pregnancy. So twins might happen. They can happen. So sometimes even in, let's say, a 34-year-old, we have transferred 2 embryos. It just might happen by chance that both of them decide to stick. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of it is under our control also. So if we do not transfer insane number of embryos like 4 or 5, you are not going to mostly end up in twins or triplets. So pre 2021, we did not have a law on IVF. We just had ICMR guidelines. But since the law has now come, which allows us to transfer up to 3 embryos.
Okay.
So one should not go beyond that. Not a good thing. And if twins happen, yes, of course, in our country, wo ek ke saath ek free is ingrained in all of us, you know.
And we enjoy that.
And so couples who've been struggling, we've had cases where they've been 17 years of marriage, 23 years of marriage and struggling for children. Well, they're double happy.
Yeah, of course. 100%.
And but then you have to support the pregnancy. You have to explain them, these slightly high risk factors of a twin pregnancy. Yeah. And at Gaudium, usually we have protocols where we support at least up to the 12th week of pregnancy, because your 95% risk of abortion lies in the first 12 weeks.
Right.
If you sail through them, the risk is minimized.
Okay. Let's talk about another aspect and component of this, which is surrogacy. And it's something that is not very often discussed, lots of taboos attached with the process, but it is it is considered almost natural in world over, right? That surrogacy is considered a natural output.
Right.
Talk to me about that. What does it entail and how does one go about it?
Right. So surrogacy is just one of the assisted reproductive technologies that is available. So you have like IUI, you have IVF, and then you have surrogacy, right? So surrogacy is meant for people where either they have a birth defect, like they do not have a uterus by birth or a very small uterus, or they are suffering from medical factors, like she is a patient of uncontrolled systemic lupus erythematosus, uncontrolled hypertension, uncontrolled diabetes, or you have conditions wherein you are undergoing a renal problem, a renal disease, and you can't carry your pregnancy. So these are all medical indications. And then, just for before 2015, international patients were also allowed to come and do surrogacy here. So we had this criminal lawyer from New York who, by birth, had no uterus, but she had beautiful ovaries.
Yeah.
So we stimulated those ovaries, we took the eggs, we took her husband's semen, and then they were put into a surrogate, and she delivered. So what happens at the end is that it is giving you the opportunity, technology is giving you the opportunity to have your own biological baby, even when you do not have a developed uterus.
Correct.
So these are all, genuine indications for surrogacy. And I distinctly remember this case because the then US ambassador came to our clinic to congratulate us that how easy it went and how meticulous was the paperwork. And my staff didn't realize who she was, and they made us sit for 45 minutes in the waiting area. And then a security guy came to me कि मैम आपने किसको बिठा रखा है. Yeah, but it was a sweet gesture from her. So, and then, so this is how surrogacy works. There is also a lot of myth that, so we deal with a lot of, I would say, the who's who of the country. Obviously can't name. So, it's a myth that everybody in Bollywood would do surrogacy just because they don't want to disturb their physical appearance. No, some of them have actual indications like the recurrent pregnancy losses. So, for example, if you are trying IVF or trying naturally and you are aborting again and again, then again you are a candidate for surrogacy.
Right.
Or you have too many IVF failures, so that is known as recurrent implantation failure.
Right.
That again is an indication for surrogacy. So this is where basically you could say that the uterus has given up or is not working.
Correct.
So
That's the process.
That is the only thing. So the rest of the process remains same up to the step that the embryo transfer, instead of being done into you, is being done in a surrogate mother.
Correct.
Now, of course, it has been regulated in our country, so whoever comes under the purview of the law can get it done.
Can get it done. Okay. Yeah. What happens to the remainder of the eggs that are frozen? Another very frequent question, because one wonders.
Yes. So they are always kept. Okay. They are not our property. They are the patient's property. Okay. So they are kept safe and nicely with us. Of course, if like 2-3 years pass, we take a small maintenance cost to keep them frozen.
No, but what happens once the pregnancy is successful and she is about to deliver, but there are eggs from the pool that are still frozen? What happens to those eggs?
So those are kept safely because you might decide to have another child.
Right.
So you can use them.
Okay.
So we had a couple from Spain. They had failed like 5 cycles there. They came here, luckily got pregnant at the first cycle, and she conceived, delivered, and 4 years later she came back and we thought the same eggs and then did a second baby for her. So they are kept safely and we can keep them up to 10 years.
Okay. And say once 2 pregnancies happen, like in the case of this lucky woman, and say there are some eggs that are still remaining, then what is the process that happens?
So the patient has to sign the consent, what they want us to do. Do they still want us to keep them? Or they have to sign that, okay, they want us to destroy them.
Okay. What is the process of destruction?
Oh, you just keep them out for 2 minutes and they're gone. Because, it's like human life, which has been frozen at minus 180 degrees Celsius. So the moment they are exposed out
of that temperature
and not put in the right media where they are to be thawed, they'll just decay.
They'll decay. Okay. Let's talk about some of the most impactful cases that you've had. The one that's obviously the most famous, and it got you the world record after 17 cycles, a woman conceiving. Talk to us about how that happened.
Yeah, so...
Also, side note, this can give hope to a lot of women who are
True.
struggling with their
True.
fertility. Yeah.
True. So I'll not name, but one of my celebrity patients told me that, you kind of give hope when all hope is gone.
Yeah.
So it's like my philosophy there in multiple failed IVF cases is that please don't give up hope, because if you analyze the reason, it's very scientific. It's miracle is okay, God blesses us when we are doing it. Of course, we need His blessings. We couldn't be anybody without that. But it is science. So basically what you do is you analyze the reason and then target the reason. Having said that, there are 20% patients worldwide who fall in the category of unexplained implantation failure, where there is no explanation. So what do? You try every trick that you know because the end goal for the couple is a baby and the end goal for you is a baby. So every trick that has medically been backed and is safe, you try. Constant innovation is very important. That's how we cracked. So we actually broke our own record. So there was this couple who had failed 15 cycles, 5 from UK, 5 from US, and 5 from Delhi, Mumbai. And we did the 16th cycle. She was a controlled diabetic also, but we simultaneously kept the physician in loop, kept her diabetes under control. We got her pregnant. The day the report came, Karishma, the husband and the wife came into my room, और एक इतना बड़ा चाबियों का बंच था, उन्होंने मेरे टेबल पे रख दिया. तो I said, what is this? Like, they said कि ये हमारे गुड़गांव में ना 3-storied building है, ये आप रख लो. They were so emotional.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Tears in their eyes, and I said, ये आप उठा लो. आप अपना ध्यान रखो, because you just conceived, the journey just begin. So, let's support this, let you deliver the child. And, that child got admission into my school, DPS Arkepuram, because of the fact that I delivered that baby. So that was widely covered by the press also, that story. And this 17 one is very recent. Just 2 weeks back, we, this is a couple who struggled for years, So initially when she came to us, she had failed around 13 cycles.
How old was
she? She was 42 when she came to us. Okay. And she had already failed about these many cycles. And then, we also did the first cycle, didn't work out. There was a fibroid there. So we thought, okay, let's first try. It was not directly coming inside the cavity. Didn't work. We removed the fibroid, tried another cycle, didn't work. But I must say that here I always tell my patients also, it is the willpower of the woman plays a huge role. Believe me, I've seen it. I've seen it that, when you have the will that you're going to become a mother, it's somehow, it helps, the universe actually conspires to do that. So she was very, her husband was in fact disheartened and he had kind of given up. But she was very strong-willed. She said, okay, I told her, okay, let's take a little break. Sometimes a break helps. So we gave her a 3-month break. We did again. We used some innovation. And she finally got pregnant.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And that day, she sat for 1 hour in my room telling me about her whole journey and how it was and how everybody kept telling her that don't do this now, it'll never happen for you. But she kept her faith alive and it worked.
Wow, it sounds it sounds overwhelming, and you're actually doing God's work, because this is when
Trying.
Families are at their lowest because they can't conceive, and that's the most distressing time. I've had friends who've been through IVF cycles, and the yield has been very low, and they're cycle after cycle, and
Yes.
when you finally hear the words that you're pregnant, I don't think there is a feeling that could compare.
True.
So
True.
Congratulations on that.
Thank
And
you. It is. I've had instances जहाँ पर divorce papers मैंने अपने कमरे में फड़वाए. And I used to think that this is a very Indian thing. Believe me, when I started out, I thought that marriages in our country break because of these things. But no, when we started getting patients from across the world, we had American patients also crying that if I don't get pregnant this cycle, doc, I'll get divorced.
Oh God.
So I realized this emotion is universal.
Of course, everybody feels it at certain
Everybody
levels.
feels
Yeah.
it at certain levels.
Okay. So we have an interesting segment. It's called Ask the Expert.
Okay.
So we've placed different couple scenarios in front of you, and what advice would you give them?
Okay.
Yeah. We're a couple trying to conceive naturally for 2 years without success. What are the options we have, and how do we determine which one is right?
Right. So if you've been trying naturally for 2 years, it's time you meet a fertility expert, get your blood workup done, and get the husband semen analysis done. So first and foremost, the problem has to be identified. If it's like a simple problem that you are, maybe early PCOS, then some medications, some ovulation induction medicines, some advice on natural contact, when to have contact, some ultrasound monitoring, that's it. You might be able to conceive. Otherwise, if your husband's semen has lower motility, then you can try IUI, but IUI success rates are pretty low. They're just about 8 to 10%. And when these modalities have been tried and is not working, please don't go for unlimited number of ovulation induction drug cycles. Believe me, we get patients who've had like 20 cycles of those, 15 cycles. This is crazy because you can't see it now, but in future life, post 60s maybe, it increases your chances of having ovarian cancer. So don't go through these cycles unnecessarily. So if you've tried enough, so the standard recommendations are 6 cycles if you're younger than 35, or 3 cycles if you're more than 35. If that's not happened, then go for IVF.
Okay. I'm a 30-year-old single woman considering IVF with donor sperm. What are the key factors I should consider?
Okay. So, you should be sure you want to be going ahead with this, and you're not going to change your plan midway or your mind. Secondly, then you contact the clinic. The clinics are supposed to source these semen samples from registered ART banks. You could give some specifications if you have in mind physical characteristics and stuff like that. And then always a tested sample is provided to the clinic by the bank, which is tested for all major viral markers and basic diseases. And so then you can, if your egg reserve is good, you can probably go for an IUI. If your egg reserve is low, you could go straight for an IVF. That's the process.
Okay. We're a couple who have undergone multiple unsuccessful IVF cycles and we're emotionally drained. What factors should we consider before starting another cycle?
Right. So this is one procedure which is emotionally, financially, and physically draining. So, we at Gaudium have this program called Mantrana.
Okay.
So Mantrana is Sanskrit for counseling. So we always give more time to the patient who has failed. The one who's pregnant, okay, it's all smiles, we start the support treatment. But the patient who's just come negative needs a lot of emotional counseling. Believe me, emotional handling of the patient and emotional counseling of the patient is very important to the success. Right. Research shows that there's a 29% negative impact of stress on your IVF result.
Right.
So that counseling has to be done. Your choice of clinic has to be correct. Choose a clinic which has the right credentials, has an expert team, all state-of-the-art technology available, that's the clinic you go to. And then they'll probably analyze well your case. Most of the times, a solution can be found, the reason can be identified and treated. So hope is not lost.
Hope is not lost. Okay. Now we'll bust some myths. We've busted a few through the episode, but let's concise them in one go, right?
Sure.
If you're healthy and fit, you won't have fertility issues.
No, that's a myth because you might not know what is brewing inside.
Yeah. Infertility is primarily a woman's issue.
Oh, well, definitely not. Yeah. So, as I've already said, 40% male, 40% female, 20% both partners. So, men are equally responsible.
Men's fertility doesn't decline with age.
Okay, so men don't have a menopause. Correct. And women do. Why? Because women are born with a fixed number of eggs, whereas sperm production happens in the body almost every 16 days.
Yeah.
But there's a catch here. Post a certain age of 45, 47, what happens is that the sperm quality starts declining. Yeah. So the number of normal sperms will decline. There'll be more mutations in the sperms, and hence there could be risk of abnormal sperms and then having genetically abnormal babies. Yeah, so the quality does decline.
Okay. Using birth control pills for a long time can cause infertility.
Well, if you are continuously using them for a very long time, like if you give a break, so what are you doing? You're telling the ovary not to ovulate.
Correct.
Now, if you're telling the ovary for straight 24 months not to ovulate, it kind of sleeps. And then return to fertility takes time, and sometimes fertility is reduced also.
Okay.
So even if you want to take fertility, birth control pills for a longer time, give breaks, like take them for 3 months, leave for a cycle, then again take, that's the better way.
Okay. If you've had a child before, you won't face infertility issues later.
Oh, that's a complete myth because secondary infertility is pretty common. So secondary is when you've already had a child. So there could be tubal block that might happen after the birth. There can be, if a deep uterine infection happens, endometritis happens, Asherman syndrome, there are many indications that could happen. A polycystic ovarian patient, the polycystic ovaries might return back.
Yeah.
So,
not guaranteed. Okay.
Not guaranteed.
The quality of frozen eggs deteriorates over time.
No, if they are kept under controlled conditions, it doesn't deteriorate with time. But yes, the maternal age is the single biggest determining factor of success in an IVF cycle.
Right.
So the younger you are and you get them transferred back, more is your chances of getting pregnant. Yes, with frozen eggs, the success rate of comparisons, the complete data is not yet out because, egg freezing is still not that very common. But yes, is roughly 4-5% less than the normal IVF success rate.
Understood. IVF always results in multiple births.
No, that's a myth.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that.
Babies born through IVF are less healthy than those conceived naturally.
Not at all. It's a complete myth. In fact, our patients keep telling us, "Aapne kya kiya hai? Ye bahut intelligent hai." So, no, that's a myth. So
once you freeze your eggs, it becomes difficult for you to conceive naturally.
Oh no, not at all. So you froze your eggs in, for example, the June of 2024. Your normal cycle revives in the July of 2024.
And you can conceive naturally.
Of course, why not? Okay. If you don't have any other factor which is contributing to infertility, you can.
IVF is not the factor.
IVF is definitely not the factor.
Okay, so it brings us to the end. It's been extremely comprehensive. I've loved this chat and you answered a lot of my questions. So I'll end with this, right? Like you said, outside of IVF, giving birth to a child is it's a physical process, an emotional process. Obviously, it's expensive to raise babies today.
Yeah.
What advice would you give couples who are planning to give birth?
If you've decided to have a child, don't let time run out, because the faster you seek help if you need it, it is better. And only one advice I would like to keep, that please assess your relationship, that it is strong.
Yeah.
Don't bring a child if the marriage is in a chaos.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yes, seek fertility experts' advice at the right time.
Yeah.
Because the sooner you do it, the higher are your chances.
Yeah. That's great advice. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure. And I hope that this inspires people to have hope, and women everywhere to know that they have options, and the options are not harmful towards them. They're not extremely expensive, and it is accessible. So I hope this gives that information out there.
Yeah, I hope so too, because, we are all about women empowerment.
Yeah.
I started with that small 800 square feet facility with my own savings.
Yeah.
And today we are a reputed chain in the country. And we have 95% women employees.
Wow.
So we don't just preach.
Yeah.
we actually
walk the
practice.
talk.
Right.
Amazing. Huge congratulations on your journey, and may you keep impacting lakhs of lives more and give that happiness to people.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for being the best community, and we'll see you in the next one.